Steve, let's discuss the Ohio State Tressel issues that are not over. It's just beginning. The can of worms has only just been opened. What that's going to mean for Ohio State this year. I think most people, myself included, as I've kind of done an early, quick, and dirty look at the Legends and Leaders division, I had Nebraska going up against Ohio State for the championship. I felt that Ohio State would lose at Miami. There was a chance of them possibly losing 2 out-of-conference games as Terrell Pryor, DeVere Posey, Boom Herron, and the Tattoo 5 missed the first 5 games. The 5th game of that 5-game suspension was going to be against Michigan State at home in the shoe. The first game after the suspensions was in Lincoln, and I thought Nebraska was going to win that, but I didn't think Ohio State would lose another game after that game. Now, I don't think, and you and I have discussed this on video, we've discussed it between ourselves, neither of us thinks Terrell Pryor is going to play another down, right?
Yeah, I don't think he plays another game.
So let's put that one right here for a hypothetical over on the bookshelf. As we talk about this, Terrell Pryor is not going to play another game. I don't know about DeVere Posey, I don't know about Boom Herron. There are other players that may be implicated in this investigation, but I think it's going to take some time. But then again, Ohio State might be smart to set some of these guys aside and don't let them play as to risk another season. Who knows about that? I don't think now, if Terrell Pryor is not going to play, all right, I'm not going to pick them to win the Leaders division. Now, I think that division this year is weak. I don't want to call it Big 12 North-like just yet, but it's weak. Penn State, they have offensive line issues. They don't know who their quarterback's going to be. Is it going to be Matt McGloin or is it going to be Rob Bolden? We don't know.
A kid whose dad was saying last January he was going to transfer.
And the guy who
they're going to turn around and make that guy your starting quarterback? I don't know about that.
Well, at least he doesn't have to go to Alabama, to Ohio State, and to Iowa this year, which is a pretty tough stretch for a true freshman quarterback at Penn State. You know, a lot of people are jockeying Wisconsin in the national media. You know, Athlon had them somewhere in the low 20s. Some people have them higher than that. Everybody has them in the top 25. I don't have a problem with them ranked somewhere between 20 and 30, but you can't lose the firepower. They lost Moffitt. They lost Karimi on the offensive line, 2 NFL guys. They've got some decent players coming back, but not to that caliber. Who knows if with the linebackers at Borland, if he's going to rebound. You lost J.J. Watt. You lost Jay Valai, I believe. You lost Lance Kendricks, an amazing tight end. Nick Toon had a disappointing season last year. And the quarterback situation. Scott Tolzien's gone. John Budmeyer, a John Budmeyer signing. He may be their quarterback. Who knows what they're going to do? Yeah, they have running backs. They've got 2 talented running backs. You know, a little bit of thunder and lightning. But I don't think Wisconsin is a top 15 Big Ten title contender. Although lacking Terrell Pryor at Ohio State, I think that they certainly could do it.
I think the league is wide open. I thought it was pretty open to begin with. But, you know, Terrell Pryor he was really the one game breaker, as inconsistent as he was at times in the passing game. But he was the one game breaker that Ohio State had on offense.
Say 4th and 10?
Yeah, he's a pretty methodical...
Late in the game?
For all the great recruiting classes they've brought in, a lot of their offensive skill position talent's pretty workmanlike. Translation, not that explosive. He's the explosive presence on the field. Not having him there, I think, makes a huge difference on their football team. I think the same thing about Nebraska. I thought Nebraska last year was Ohio State without Terrell Pryor. I didn't see a lot of weaknesses, but I didn't see a lot of explosion. And then Taylor Martinez exploded on the scene the first half of the year. Second half of the year, everybody figured out he couldn't pass, and we saw what happened.
Terrell Pryor makes Martinez look like Dan Marino.
Yes, and now he's pretty much their only scholarship quarterback that Nebraska has.
Cody Green transferred.
Everything you're saying about Wisconsin's personnel is correct. I'm just beginning to put together my notes for the season preview. I come out every July. And, you know, I backlog, I backstory, I deconstruct my predictions. I start from how I think the season will end, and then I do my preseason predictions as a projection of that. I'm struggling to find more than 2 losses on Wisconsin's schedule, and I don't, there's a lot of their personnel issues I don't really care for.
They don't play a true road game until the 3rd week of October.
So I think there's 2 things we can say for sure. If indeed you buy into our hypothesis that Terrell Pryor never plays again, all of these, whether it's Athlon's or Lindy's, etc., all of these preseason Big Ten football magazines, you can chuck them. They're not worth the paper they're printed on.
Well, I'm still going to buy them.
Yeah, well, we are. It's a rite of passage and we're addicts. But really, I would. Their predictions are. They might as well just start all over again. Hit Control Alt Delete.
Something like this is a nightmare.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Secondly, I don't think there's really a definitive team. Nebraska, personnel-wise, might have the 2nd best personnel now with all the problems with Ohio State. But they also have a schedule. The Big Ten did them no favors with that schedule. So I think this thing is absolutely wide open. In fact, as I look across the country, I don't see a lot of teams at first blush that really stand out to me. You know, maybe Oklahoma, they're going to be one of the chic picks. Their schedule is pretty tough, John. Florida State on the road, Texas A&M on the road, Oklahoma State on the road, Texas on a neutral field. That's a pretty tough schedule that Oklahoma is going to be playing. You know, LSU, a lot of people are talking about them. Listen, you can't hide your quarterback in college football.
Heard that before.
And LSU has the worst starting quarterback of probably any BCS top 25 team, or a team that thinks it could be a top 25 team.
Other than Wisconsin.
Returning in college football. No. At least Wisconsin has hope. The potential of someone who hasn't played yet. We've seen all we need to see of Jordan Jefferson. He's not any good. And you wonder what they've recruited behind him that they haven't been able to do anything about that for 2 years now. So and have you seen LSU's schedule? Opening up against Oregon on a neutral field.
Go to Oregon. What about Oregon?
Oregon's a team that they got to replace a lot of their defensive line. Their offensive line skill positions are dynamite. Best collection of skill position talent probably in college football. And the schedule.
Their offensive line and skill position talent's dynamite?
Offensive line and defensive line, they got to replace some guys.
All right.
But you look at their schedule, maybe 2 games, maybe 2, that they're an underdog. The opener against LSU in Atlanta, and then at the end of the year they go to Stanford. Maybe they're an underdog in that game, maybe. But they have a ready-made schedule. I'll give you a team to look out for. And this will be something no one's going to want to hear, and believe me, I don't want to have to say it. But you know me, I call it as I see it, even if it's not what I prefer. I hate to say this, but I would look out for Auburn if they make one move. If Auburn is able to sign Russell Wilson, if they're able to bring him in, Russell Wilson's the best quarterback in college football most of you haven't seen for the last 3 years.
State?
This is the prolific passer and runner and athlete from NC State.
8,000 yards.
And he's been a one-man show. I mean, he single-handedly saved Tom O'Brien's skin at NC State, taking him to 2 bowl games the last 3 years when overall their talent level wasn't there to make that happen. Well, because of the rule that emerged a couple of years ago, if you graduate, have your degree, and you have a year of eligibility left, you can move on if you want.
As long as the school that you're going to has
the same major that you're looking for, or a major that you need in a graduate school.
A graduate school major that the old school didn't offer.
Yes, and on that list is Auburn. And if he were to go to school there, they could do the exact same thing with him that they did with Cam Newton.
Without Nick Fairley.
Without Nick Fairley. But I think that's a school that he instantly, I think, he transforms. He has the potential, depending on where he goes. He could transform the entire college football season. I look at a team like Florida State. You look at every place they're at on the roster, they're as good as any team in college football, except one place. Quarterback. E.J. Manuel hasn't really been lights out, and we've had plenty of chance to see him the last couple of years because Christian Ponder was pondering why he was hurt all the time on the sidelines. All right? And if they had a major that he could transfer to Florida State, of course it's in the same conference, so you couldn't do that anyway from a scholarship perspective, but that's an example of teams that maybe are one piece away. And one player to watch for the next few weeks is Russell Wilson, depending on where he ends up. This is such a wide open year.
Wisconsin was being rumored to be one of the teams as well.
And I was going to bring them up too. If he were to go to a Wisconsin, that I think transforms the entire Big Ten. Absolutely, I agree with that. I think he's that good of a player, depending on where he ends up.
For 2 teams.
Yes.
He's that good of a player for 2 teams, for Wisconsin and for Auburn.
Yep.
Were he to land there, that could be your national champion.
Listen, you open up Athlon's magazine. Sean Prater's a nice player. I think I texted this to you earlier today.
You did.
If Sean Prater is a second-team All-American, then I think you get a pretty good idea of how watered down and thin the talent level is in college football because of the drain that's occurred for the last 2 years with just about every underclassman getting in before that NFL collective bargaining agreement expired and they were subjected to a rookie salary cap. And I think you're going to really see that really come to fruition this year. There's a lot of teams. When you look at these polls, Alabama's ranked #1 by Athlons. Alabama? How many teams lose 4 guys to the first round of the NFL draft and they're #1 the next year? That almost never happens. Phil Steele's always got that article in the back of his magazine, right? Whoever has the most guys lost to the NFL struggles the next year. Alabama would be one of those teams. But everything is so watered down, John, that a player like a Russell Wilson, just one player, how many guys, when you look at these starters returning, how many of these teams that are highly ranked have 9, 10, 11, 12 starters coming back? Meaning there's a lot of wide open people that are competing for spots. And if a guy like a Russell Wilson lands at Auburn or lands at Wisconsin, look out.
There's a lot of programs, you know, middle tier programs, not that Michigan's historically not a middle tier program, but you have a lot of programs like a Michigan, like a Northwestern, at least here talking Big Ten, that are returning a lot of starters that can make some noise. This year's top 25 could look a lot different by the end of the season. And when we start breaking that down, your college football preview down here in another couple of weeks, we're going to need chairs and a lot of batteries for this remote because it's going to be a lot of segments. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.